Hey everyone, it's Jake Clark and John Schneider from Fargo 3D Printing, podcast number 6. Today we're going to be covering 2 myths, and so it's going to be a quick and short one today. So myth number 1, or number 3 in our lineup is 3D printing, it's easy. It depends.
It does depend.
So let's talk about FDM. We'll kind of go through a little bit of it's easy on like maybe 2 or 3 different technologies. So the Maker bots, the Cube Pros, the Lulz bots, those are FDM or fused deposition modeling. So it's easy with those. Yes and no. It depends. If you have a model that you download from Thingiverse that's a clean, watertight model, it is pretty easy to download, bring it in the slicer software, slice it up, and then export it into the MakerBot, and then if everything's correct on the MakerBot, print it. If it's not right, if there's a bug in one of those, so let's say one of your Thingiverse files is not watertight, and it's done in Google SketchUp, and somebody doesn't fix it in NetFab, all of a sudden you got a bunch of inverted faces that have, it's theoretically a hole in that model, and now you got to go try and fix it. If, you might not even be able to fix it. You bring it into the software, it won't read it right, it'll have holes in it, and you go to print it, you'll end up with a bird's nest.
It's a mess.
It is.
It can be a mess. So, 3D printing is, you need to know what you're doing. It's not that it's difficult, and it's not that it's easy or it's not easy. It's that you just need to know what you're doing. You need to understand how the printer works. You can't just, unless you already have a file that someone like MakerBot has already verified as printable on the machine, where they said, hey, we've tested this, we know that this works, then downloading that file and hitting print, yeah, that is easy. But if it's something that you've designed yourself, you need to know, okay, well, I know that the way I design this, it's going to interact a certain way with the printer. I know that it's going to work really well, or maybe it's not going to work very well. But if you just go in and start designing something, Jake, you made some great points. If you don't know how the file's going to react when you export it, or if you have reversed faces, or if you have holes in the model, sometimes the printer can work past those on its own, but a lot of times it just can't. Tools are getting easier to use, but it's still, you need to know which tools to run your file through to make sure that it is printable.
Yeah, definitely. Because I used to design for industry before starting Fargo 3D with you, and it was really interesting because I'd design something and then I'd print it out, and then the way that the layers interact with one another, how it's laid down, can actually affect how the part works. So for instance, if you're doing a snap fit, the snap fit, if you do it a certain way, let's say your snap fit comes up and it's supposed to flex back and forth this way. Well, if you print it like this and your different layers are stacked, what's going to happen is you're going to delaminate those different layers, where if all of a sudden I turn my snap fit on the side, well, now we have those layers going lengthwise, where now you can have more of that snap fit flex to it, and it won't break. So it's changing the orientation is also a component of, if something, is it easy or not, of printing, because certain ways you print things are going to have different reactions. Where if you print an SLA, that's going to be a little bit different because the layers are finer. It has a more, I think like every, I don't know how many, maybe 30 microns it does a layer.
Something like that, yeah.
So you're going to have something of a little bit more flex because those layers aren't going to delaminate as easy as FDM. SLS is going to be a little bit different. Living hinges actually work beautifully in SLS machines. So that's where there's like your DVD cases are actually living hinges where the plastic is actually the hinge. There's no physical hinge there. So with the myth being it's easy, it's kind of plausible. It depends on your technology you're using, how familiar you are with 3D printing, and where you got your file.
Yeah, but it's not as easy as downloading a PDF into hitting the print button and having it pop out of your printer. And unless you already have a file that's been vetted, it's just not going to be easy. You need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, all right. Then what was the other one we're going to hit?
So
today?
the last one we're going to hit is 3D. So the myth is 3D printed objects are always high quality.
Again, define what high quality means. So if you look at something that is, so let's take this little octopus as an example. I consider this a high quality print. It's pretty smooth, but it's not really a print that's too complicated either. There really aren't any overhangs. It didn't need any support material. It just printed really well. Now, if you look at something that is more complex, using this type of 3D printing, it's not necessarily going to be high quality because you have all your layers, and unless you have a good support structure, when you start peeling everything off, it might not have a high quality finish. And then if you look at a different type of 3D printing, so this is FDM. Now, if you were to do something in SLA or SLS, then you're going to have a nicer surface finish, but it might not be quite as strong of a part. It all depends on what type of 3D printing method that you're using. And it also comes down to how high quality the model is. Now, this, I think, is probably close to 10 megabytes of a model. That's how large the model file is. And that's because it has nice, smooth surfaces. You could maybe have a lower quality version of this, but you'd have fewer polygons, so it would look a lot more jaggy. Instead of having a nice round edge, it would be sort of almost more like a octagon or a hexagon, or maybe something that has 10 sides instead of this one probably has 100 sides, 100 different walls. So it comes down to your file quality. It comes down to the method of printing, your actual material, the design itself, not even just the file quality, but just the design, like how complex of a design it is.
Yeah, I mean, layer resolution, how often your layer height is. So in these, standard is 200 microns. So, in some people's opinion, like you said, that could be high quality. To us, that's pretty good. For the FDM, that's pretty high quality. You can go down to 70 or 75 microns on the Cube Pro Duo or on the Cube Pro line. You can go down to 100 microns on the MakerBots. Setting-wise, I think you can go a little bit lower if you go in there and change it. But
yeah, I've heard of some people with an FDM printer going as low as 15 to 25 microns, but it's pretty finicky at that point. You need to have a smaller nozzle. You really need to make sure you have pure filament so that it doesn't clog the smaller nozzle. You have to have everything really dialed in. So you can get good quality FDM style prints, but it's also going to take longer. It's just there's all of these. There's a lot of give and take with 3D printing. It's if you have high quality, like a nice surface finish, and it's built from a strong material, it's going to take a long time to print, or it might use a lot of materials, or maybe the printer that you're printing it on is more expensive. There really is no one good, one size fits all printer. It depends on what you're going to be making.
Yeah, I don't know what I mean. I had a point and I just went away. But so, myth 4 of 3D objects are high quality is, again, plausible. It all depends on what your viewpoint of high quality is. If 200 micron standard resolution from a MakerBot is high quality to you, then that's high quality. If you're in medical grade and you want 16 micron layer resolution from an SLA MJP machine, that's high quality to you, and FDM, is not at all. It's far from it.
Yeah. But then you're gonna need a $200,000 machine versus a $2,000 machine. There's that trade-off of price and quality. You do get what you pay for. There's some good FDM style printers at a pretty low price point, but you're never going to be having prints quite as good as one of the higher end machines. That's just the way it is.
I remembered my point that I was going to make. So when he was talking about upgrading the machine so you can print down to like the 25 to 15 micron layer resolution or something along that lines, at that point, you might be better off just going out and contracting to have an SLA or SLS part done, because the time and material and supplies you're going to need to get your FDM machine to get to that point, and some of the issues you might run into, isn't worth your time, to be honest, where you could just for a little bit more money, you could have Fargo 3D printing contract your SLA part so that you can have that high quality part right away instead of trying to work with the FDM machine. So again, myth 4, plausible. Just depends on your definition of high quality. So t-shirt contest. Got this from the Best Robotics team. One of our employees are a part of that. I don't remember exactly which one it is. It's one of the NDSU Best or Bison Best. They're in one of those. But,
you know more than I do.
So shout out to them. So got my Star Wars t-shirt. So I'm pretty stoked about that. But yeah.
All right, cool. Well, on behalf of Jake Clark and me, John Schneider, we'd like to thank you for watching another episode of the Fargo 3D Printing Show. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us on YouTube or like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We're also in the iTunes store, so if you're not always able to watch the video version and audio is just fine for you, definitely subscribe to that so you're always up to date on the latest episode. So, thanks again.
Thanks. Their biggest.
It'd be fun if you guys do little. It's going. It'd be nice if you guys do like little.
It's not an
picture
N64
updates.
cartridge.